Well, hello everyone. I'm Kadri Bussov. I'm the CEO of the Estonian Student Satellite Foundation. We are the one who built and launched the first Estonian satellite called SQ. We are SQ1. We are currently building the second satellite called SQ2. So I'm here moderating my very first panel. So please be patient with me. And with this note, I would really like to welcome on stage the people that I will be moderating. Hello, please come aboard. Oh, so watch your step.
Watch out for that first.
Yes. So we have Stephan Reckie, we have Achache, and Ivar Kruusenberg. So, well, welcome. And for starters, I would like you to introduce yourself a little bit and what it is that you do. Why are you here on a space panel? So, how about you, Stephan?
Great, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you for the organizers here for the honor of presenting and talking. So my name is Stephan Reckie. I currently am the Executive Director of the Global Entrepreneurship Network for Space, where we're trying to make it as space as a place to do business. And if you want to do business there, you can be an entrepreneur as well. In addition, I run a global angel network called Jealous Funding, and we've invested in several space companies. The reason I'm here, I think, is to add a perspective of access to capital for space entrepreneurs and kind of the real scoop. So a real honest and truthful perspective on the complexities or the challenges of fundraising for space.
Okay. I would like to ask a quick follow-up question before I go on with the rest of the panelists. Is that you mentioned that you are you're creating the network of space entrepreneurs, a worldwide network.
Global, universal.
Yes, universal.
So
yes.
If we have any entrepreneurs that reside on other planets and are watching this right now, please contact me.
Yeah, but could you maybe a few words with your own words say why do you find it so necessary to connect these old entrepreneurs in space sector?
Because I still think there's a space race. So it's very compartmentalized in terms of the space agencies, the different countries doing different space activities. So there really is no communication and cooperation. And I think just as any basic principles of sharing best practices of entrepreneurship, you want to be able to communicate. You want to be able to reuse what works and not do what doesn't work. And it doesn't exist today, and the Global Entrepreneurship Network is in 170 countries. So we have unique access to make that happen.
Okay, thank you. And yes.
Well, I had a very long life in space. I've been in space probably for the last 40 years. I started first as an academia. I was a professor of physics in France, and I started space geophysics. I mean, how can you look at the Earth from space? And after 20 years in this, I became a bureaucrat in space. I was heading space agencies, the French Space Agency, the European Space Agency in Earth observation, and even a UN organization. So that was another almost 15, 20 years of bureaucracy, and now I'm helping companies. So it's a third career, still in space, still on satellites, but as an angel investor, as a coach, as a tutor, helping young companies to grow, like Ivar, and use space or develop new space technologies.
I also have a follow-up question to you before we go on to Ivar. Is that I probably believe that the audience doesn't know, but you're the architect behind the Copernicus program. Am I right?
I'm sorry?
You are the architect behind the Sentinel satellites.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's one thing I did. I mean, I tried to plant a few seeds throughout this career, both in science and in programs. And when I was heading the Earth observation programs at the European Space Agency, I started a program which by then was called GMES and meant Global Monitoring for Environment and Security. And this is now Copernicus. And so I invented the Sentinels, and actually even better, but I'm more even prouder of, is the open data policy of Copernicus, free and open access to the data. This was critical for small companies to be able to get the data and then develop applications in precision farming or water management. So I did that, yes, I'm quite proud.
So I understand that why you started this program and why you were creating the draft for it. You already had in mind and you hopeful that having an open data would kickstart and would help a lot of companies to kickstart their startups with using this data. So you already had this outlined in your head?
Yes, absolutely. After building satellites, launching satellites, inventing programs, I guess the next thing I wanted is to see people using those satellites, making them useful for science or for business. And I think there are a million things that you can do with satellites, or new satellites that you can design and build. And so I really wanted to see these incredible infrastructure which has been invested by ESA, NASA and other countries over the last 20 years being used as an infrastructure, as a commodity. And that's why now I'm helping small companies to do that, to get the data and develop an application, or maybe invent new technologies which would complement the existing infrastructure. So that's the driver indeed.
That's wonderful. Ivar.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yes.
So,
Can you please?
so the Copernicus Masters project, was that something that came up after?
Yeah, it came up after, but it's the same idea. I mean, being driven by the needs of users, the needs of communities, and the masses, and the Copernicus
I think it's amazing. I went to the event last year, and it was just a fantastic grouping. Yeah. It's basically an app store.
Except that they're selecting too many projects. I mean, there are not that many good ideas, and so you have to be selective if you really want to strive.
Wonderful. Now, and our last panelist, Ivar, please.
Yeah. So I'm Ivar Kruusenberg. I'm the CEO of PowerUp Energy Technologies, and we are producing hydrogen fuel cell-based electric generators. And so we are why we are in this panel is that we are part of the European Space Agency incubation program. It's a big here in Tartu, and most probably you want to know what's our connection with the space.
That would be my question.
So basically, as most of the ESA-big teams are bringing their technology from the ground to the space, then our mission is to bring the space technology first of all to the ground. So we are using in our electrical generators fuel cells, which were first introduced to the space industry, the space shuttles, and then we also use supercapacitors, planar batteries, and then what's one of the connections with the space is also that we're using GPS as well in our generators to track where they are and where the hydrogen is needed, and etc.
You mean Galileo?
Yes, actually, that's correct.
That's great, because this was my follow-up question, like, well, how are you related to space? But you already answered it, so I don't have a follow-up question to you at this moment.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, we need to agree beforehand about these things then next time. Before we met here today, I asked all of you, like, what it is that you would, do you have anything that you would definitely would like to get across while we have the opportunity to talk here, and we did got some ideas, and the main ideas is that I guess why we are here and what a lot of people want to know is that how to find funding for your space startup. And I think that to start this thing off, I think you suggested in your email that the hyperspace is over. Could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit? What did you mean by that? As the hype of space, new space?
Well, it means that I mean you will not get a lot of funding just by going to space. I mean, maybe that happened a couple of times 10 years ago. Now, really, space is like any other business. You have to have a business plan and a good forecast of sales. In other words, you have to meet the demand. So if you're solving a problem which responds to a real demand, people or companies are prepared to pay for, then go for it. If you think it's nice, you won't get funding. If you think it's useful, but no one's going to pay for it, and there are a lot of applications of space in environmental monitoring, in global warming management, forest management, but the monetization of these undertakings is extremely difficult. So you may find seed investors at the beginning, angels like me, who will support a good idea, but then to grow it you will need VCs, and VCs, they're not very creative, and they're very cautious. In particular, they're going to be more and more cautious in the context of 2019. So they will really look at what your perspectives on sales. So that's really what you should have in mind. Don't think that because it's space, it's any different. You have to have a business, and to have a business, you have to have customers. Customers means you have to meet a demand.
And of course, when you talk about space, it's also not that easily scalable. Whatever you send up, it's just because you make it cheaper and more accessible to space, launch up more things. It doesn't mean that it scales the same way, let's say, yes.
Absolutely, we discussed that earlier. It's not because you can do something in a much cheaper way. And new space is all about building satellites for 200K and launching them for 200K, so you can have a satellite up in orbit for a few 100K, whereas it used to take several hundred millions 10 years ago. But it's not because you're going to do it for 300K that it's going to be more useful. It could be cheaper, but if there's a need for 10 satellites, you'd rather sell them for 300 million if there are 10 of them, because if with your 300K satellites you only sell 10 of them, you don't have a real business. So scaling the satellites down, making them cheaper, should be a way to access a bigger demand. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
And it's also, well, access is important too. The iteration time of getting something up to space for prototyping, I mean, the costs are going down, or you can get sponsored through organizations like CASES or NanoRacks in the US, but you still need to get your prototype up to space, whatever you're doing. And that takes time. It takes time to do the testing, the certification, and all that. It's important to find an investor that's patient enough to wait for that proof of concept to be there. So, although the costs are going down, as I was saying, you have to have a meaningful reason for getting up there. So.
Yes, that is the other thing, that it takes time to develop anything that you can actually send to space, even for a demonstration, to show that this is something new that we can use, and we can create something new applications that could be useful. So that kind of prolongs the development cycle. So let's say you do have an idea, what would be your suggestions on how to find this financing during this maybe years of development that you need to do.
And well, you also have who's your customer? Is your customer going to be space-based, or is it something terrestrial? So you have to figure out, based on getting your thing up to space, is it going to benefit someone doing future space exploration, or things on the Earth? And there's so many cool applications and so many cool things, investigations that have occurred through the duration of the ISS that really is going to help change medicine and change the way we're going to do space exploration. So you want to find out why you're doing it, but it has to be a business. It can't be just an idea. So,
but then let me add a caveat to what I said earlier. There's nothing specific to space really, except maybe Rick was saying the time to demonstrating a product is a bit longer than its technology, and it's a lot of assembly, integration, and testing, so it takes time. But hopefully that's why we have ESA, the European Space Agency, and space agencies in general, as well as the space program of the European Commission, H2020. These programs are actually, or with Copernicus Masses, these programs are designed to help, to provide this additional support, incentive to help young companies to start growing. So, because otherwise, with in indeed this 2 years lead time to do any real in-orbit demonstration, that would be a killer for all companies. So that's where ESA, through the BIC, through its business application program and through all its technological programs in general, can be actually of help.
And what I would like to add to from the VC side, that I've recently talked with some VCs from the Bay Area who's interested in the space technology, and I think there's a big thanks to say to Elon Musk as well, because there's a lot of fame and like the bubble around the space thing right now, and they're really looking, as you just said, like something like real practical application, even though it may be a dream about having a rover on the Mars or a house on the Mars. But they're looking into these ideas, and they're looking how to also employ these on Earth and get profit out of that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And actually, talking about VCs, having been supported by ESA or by your national program or by the Commission, but ESA probably above all is actually significant for investors. An investor, because VCs are not familiar. Very few of them are familiar with space, otherwise it's just complicated technology with a lot of risk. And so having an ESA label on your development gives them some sort of comfort. So that's another thing I would recommend, just to demonstrate that what you are doing is backed, it's somehow labeled and stamped by ESA.
By the experts, right? And so one of the challenges is finding the success story, because investors like to invest based on previous success. And that's hard still in the space business, right? There's only a very small handful. And I would say that the billionaire club, they don't worry about the success because they have more money they can throw into it. So us as investors, we're still looking for that benchmark to say, what has been the proven success in space, and how does this next venture mimic or have the same trajectory as that success, right? There's only a handful.
But it's a good point. When there is an idea out there, and for instance, I'm the chairman of a company which is building a constellation for IoT, for connecting objects. Okay, this was a really new idea when we started, but like every good idea, it spreads. It's copied. So now there's probably 50 initiatives which are trying to build satellites, small satellites for IoT. So it becomes a competition. And then again, quality will matter, execution will be the key. So these are the kind of words you hear in any startup gathering. The criteria for success: one, execution, the team, the quality of the team, the quality of the technology. These are standard criteria, and they become even more important when there's that much competition, like in IoT. There's a lot of competition on launchers as well, so execution will be critical. So it's another thing. There seem to be not that many ideas how to use space, so when there's one, you see a lot of people going into it.
But yeah, you just brought the parallel that space startup should not be very much different from any regular startup. But it is in a way that the entry ticket is much higher. So anyone just can't wake up one morning and think I have a great idea, I'm going to sit behind my computer, I'm going to start doing it, here we go. I mean, it does take quite a lot more very specific expertise, and it does take a little more money to start out. So what would you suggest for people with ideas to how to get started in that sense?
I guess Elon Musk is a good example. I mean, he had plenty of money and a remarkable idea, which was to reintroduce redundancy. I mean, the big fad in 2000 was you have to have as few motors on the launcher as possible, because a motor was a point of failure. So if you have two, you double the point of failure. And he said, no, this is completely stupid, and I will reverse that. I will put 10 motors on SpaceX Falcon 9, and that way I will get redundancy and learning curve, which is 10 times faster, and it worked. So he came with a completely different idea, and he spent 10 years before he actually could launch his first rocket. So it's a very long time. as I said, the best way is to use the BIC. There's a very dynamic BIC here in Estonia, a business incubating center supported by ESA. Then through the BIC you're introduced to ESA engineers and or ESA programs, and use these programs to actually buy time to develop your technology. And when you're ready, then you become a company like any other. Then you enter the competition process of what I said earlier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's definitely a long process. For us, it has been taking almost 3 years to get to where we are right now, and I would say we're still really early stage. And so it's just waking up in the morning with a nice idea doesn't really help. You need to have a nice team around supporting that as well. You need to have some knowledge. I mean, I have more than 12 years of experience in the fuel cells, and that's how we got there. And also, yeah, the funding is really tough. And yeah, as you just said, like using these grants in the beginning, small grants like ESA big grant, for example, and using also in EU, I have Horizon 2020, which is really hard to get. But we have also some national funding opportunities, and there's a lot of equity free grants. So reaching out the angels and VCs in the beginning, like giving out a lot of equity for almost for nothing, it's not the smartest idea to do. Smartest way to go.
Yes, because it's the other thing, like when you are doing anything hardware thing that isn't actually there, whether it's a robot or a battery cell or whatever, you build it, you test it, it fails, and then you have to build it from the scratch, you know, with everything in, make this physical thing again. So it really prolongs the development time for creating this working prototype. So
yeah, I'm really like, I envy these IT guys. It's like having two guys computing, something failing, I mean, letting it running again. So for us, it's lead times for getting anything, batteries from suppliers or whatever, it takes really long time. This is our basically 5th generation of the prototype. So every prototype has been taking like almost half a year to build. So it's a really long process.
But it's not always the case, and I don't want to let you leave this room by thinking that going to space is lengthy and complicated. Copernicus, back to the basics, Copernicus is generating the largest database on Earth. The amount of data that is generated by Sentinel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is kind of gigantic. It's petabytes per day. And there are tons of information in this database. The only way to extract it will be artificial intelligence, deep learning. So if you're into deep learning and you don't want to do any hardware, you want to go back to this pure software approach, deep learning, big data analysis, data sampling, is a key to entering the Earth observation business and actually solving a number of problems. One of the key problems we were discussing with Ivar before is water. How do you find water on Earth using satellites? I'm sure the solution is in the Copernicus database if you put a little bit of deep learning onto it. So if you're on it, go for it.
Yeah, and I would like to add actually for the hardware as well. ESA is actually offering fast-forward way by giving chance to use their patents. So actually, the startupper can really go and look up the patents and get it for like almost for nothing. So this is really fast-forward to go. You don't have to go from the scratch. You can make something discovered by the scientists.
we have like six more minutes, so there was something that I would really like to ask from you. So to maybe give people some ideas, what would you think is the next big thing in space tech? What will become big and what will create revenue and profit, in your opinion? Where to go?
Meaning commercialization?
Yes.
Or?
Yes, commercialization.
I might be on the edge by saying something on the order of high-speed transportation, high-speed communications, I mean, connectivity between places on Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I know the crazy thing about space elevators or Hyperloop or those kind of things, but figuring out a way to get from place to place. So, I'm tied into the Spaceport Alliance, and countries and cities are becoming spaceport capable. So, some way of getting from place to place. That's going to help us get to where we want to go.
And from place to place, you mean for information or for physical beings?
Well, physical beings, yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's transportation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess optical communication will be huge because the spectrum is saturated, and actually it's shrinking because the 5G producers on Earth are grabbing part of the spectrum. So there's a need to communicate, and the best way to do it in space is optical. So any optical technology, any optoelectronics systems will be enormous. Cybersecurity, because the next issue is going to be how you can keep your satellites safe, debris and debris removal. Even though we don't have a business case yet, it's coming up pretty soon. And also, do not forget the moon. Everybody wants to go to the moon. India is sending a satellite. China landed on the hidden side of the moon last week or last month. India is launching to the moon. Israel is launching to the moon. Then the European Space Agency wants to make a huge base on the moon. So whether this is going to be useful or whether there are customers there, I doubt it, but there's tremendous support. So there's a momentum, there are programs to do that. Join these programs. That's also going to be big, and what's going to trickle out of it, I don't know, but it could be interesting.
Yeah, and from our perspective, I really hope that airspace agencies they start using the ion exchange membrane fuel cells, which will take the price of the fuel cells down so that everyone can actually use it, and that would be amazing. But yeah, I agree with you. I think maybe even mining on the moon could be something in the future. You never know. I mean, moon is then something really big, definitely.
And water management. I've been trying. It's the most challenging. I've been trying for 20 years to do water management from space with the satellites. It's very challenging, but the moment we find a way to do it, that would be remarkable.
Yeah, still. Also, you mentioned the space debris, that even though there isn't a business case in it right now, so it might mean that companies might not go and start space debris removal. But then again, we are facing the situation where some orbits may become impossible to operate in the future because of so much space debris, so that it becomes dangerous to existing satellites. So.
Well, we're far away from that because sometimes you see images with the Earth surrounded with debris, but they're not to scale because you can see the debris if you scale it on a piece of paper. So there's plenty of empty space, and debris are rare, but they may become more important, particularly with the development of small satellites, like company Swarm is launching half a unit, CubeSat, which are really, really small, and debris will proliferate, and now constellations will be launched. And a constellation by construction, all the satellites are on the same orbit or on the same sphere. So if there are debris in this region, if there's one collision, it creates debris, and exponentially it can destroy the whole constellation. So debris will become an issue in the near future. I agree.
So one thing about the research that's going on, there's so many cool things in terms of cancer research. My friends at Merck are doing this injectable chemo drug versus drip. Finding cures for muscular dystrophy because of hidden molecules that you can see because of microgravity. So there's so many cool derivatives that are going to be spun down or spun off to the US too. I mean, to the world. So, sorry. Oh, wrong meeting, wrong meeting.
Let's not exclude the rest of
Yes,
the world, right?
sorry.
Well, we're almost out of time, so we have 1 minute. It took me some time to realize that there was clock. I was looking around for it for a while, a little bit. So we have 1 minute. Do you have anything that you would like to add? Something very important message to everybody listening.
I mean, I'm just like sharing up all the startups that you would apply to this big program and then take your grant money and go to the space industry. Yeah.
And I would just want to reiterate, don't go for the hype of space. Do something that's meaningful in space. Make a business out of it, and you'll attract the right funding, but you'll solve something real. Because you have so much access to the world from space. You can look at all kinds of cool climate change issues and all those kind of things. So go in that direction, because leverage it to benefit mankind.
And even if it sounds dull in itself, you'll be in this community, which in itself is fun to be part of. So go for it.
Well, thank you very much for joining me here today.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully it'll happen again.